So we'll catch up with Bernadette later in terms of entering her name into the chat box. Thank you, Karen. I saw it come through. That's perfect. So take a minute. We are currently recording the meeting and go ahead. Hi, Colleen. Thank you. Thanks, Abby. Karen, thank you. If you are just joining, please go ahead and enter your name into the chat box, your full name, first and last name, so that we can have a record. Again, we're just required to by law. So I want to check and make sure that David's chat box is working so that David can get his stuff into the system. Hi, Amy. Thank you.
I just lost something here.
No problem. And David, if you do need help, Aaron is standing by to help us. So we've got that if we need it. You will notice that we have a few staff members on board with us. They're here to listen. And in case you guys come up with some questions, which I can't answer, which is highly likely, the staff is here to hopefully shed some light on anything, or perhaps they might have to go back and get back to us later with an answer, but hopefully that will work. So Aaron, could you make sure David's got his chat box working while I read our required statement out loud, which will take me a minute or so. So we'll see how this works. I am required to read this. It says, pursuant to Governor Ron DeSantis's Executive Order 20-52 issued on March 9th, 2020, as continuously extended, and Section 252.38 Florida statutes, all local governments are authorized to waive procedures and formalities otherwise required by both state and local law as necessary to allow the local government to continue to perform public work and take whatever prudent action is necessary to ensure the health, safety, and welfare of the community. This meeting has been noticed and will be run consistent with the meeting procedures utilizing communications media technology adopted by the City Commission on December 3rd, 2020. In light of the current pandemic, accommodations have been made to provide the opportunity for public comment without the need to attend today's meeting in person. The procedures for public comment will now be explained by the advisory group liaison, that's me. The material for today's meeting is available online at www.coconutcreek.net. Members of the public were advised in the notice for this meeting that they could address the advisory group by attending the meeting virtually or emailing comments not exceeding 400 words to eduab@coconutcreek.net or by calling 954-973-6729 to leave up to a 3-minute comment on the city's dedicated public comment voicemail. The city provided a simple set of instructions explaining how the public may submit their advanced comments, which were published in the notice and on the city's website at www.coconutcreek.net. In addition to all live public comment presented at today's meeting, all public comments that were received by email or phone message prior to 6 p.m. on March 30 will be included as part of the record for this meeting and will be considered by the advisory group before any action is taken. Anyone wishing to appeal any decision made will need a record of the proceedings and for such purpose may need to ensure that a
Cheryl, you've been muted.
Apparently, Aaron muted me, so I'm not sure where I left off, so I'm going to back up just a little bit. Anyone wishing to appeal any decision made will need a record of the proceedings and for such purpose may need to ensure that a verbatim recording of the proceedings is made, including the testimony and evidence upon which the appeal is to be based. The audio of this meeting may be requested from the City Clerk Department. In accordance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, any person with a disability requiring assistance for the meeting may notify the office of the city clerk. All right, that should do it. Eric, you just joined us. If you would please enter your full name into the chat box. And I think we're just waiting on David to get his name into the chat box as well. So I'm going to go ahead and enter my name into the chat box so that everybody knows I was here. I'm going to go ahead and enter Bernadette's name into the chat box as well so that people know that she was with us. She might have dropped off, but maybe she'll be back. All right, thanks so much for being here. This is great to see all of you. I saw some of you, most of you, I think, at our community meeting last week, which was fun as well. So the whole point today is to talk with you this group here, we call you all the advisory group. And the reason you're so important to us is that we're going to talk about what happened at the community meeting. We're going to talk a little bit about the ideas that came out of there. And I would like to get your thoughts and feedback on those key points so that we can put those into the strategic plan. I'm going to back up just a little bit to make sure we're all on the same page. And I'm going to show you an agenda so you can kind of see what's going on. And I want to make sure I capture any questions. What I'll say is that because we're a smaller group today than the community meeting last week, we'll probably do a lot of our work verbally. And again, we're being recorded, and this recording will be made part of the public record. And the chat box will also be made part of the public record so that you can, or anyone can come back through and take a look at what we talked about and what we said. Aaron and I also take notes of this meeting, so we create like a little written report for you to send back out to you to say, hey, this is what we talked about, this is what we decided. If you're like me, sometimes after a meeting, a couple days, a week after, you're like, oh, what about this? So you always will have that opportunity to come back to us, certainly for the next few weeks through April, to say, oh, what about this or what about that? We do have one more meeting as a group. So I'll also mention that as an opportunity to add some additional feedback and comments. All right. So let me stop there for a second and say, first of all, does anybody have any questions I can answer about the process, or would it be helpful to go through the process of the strategic plan that we're doing? If that would be helpful, you can give me a thumbs up. You can just nod your head. You can do an okay. Some sort of visual signal is always super helpful to me because I can see you all at the same time right now. So anything that would be helpful to go through about the process, questions about the timeline, about the community survey, any of that work that I can help answer for you? All right, David, I'm just going to enter your name into the chat box for you, but we do need to get your chat box working. So you may need to actually log off and log back in
Okay.
order to get a chat box working if it's not working for you right now. And Aaron, if you could, David's email, of course, is in our system. So maybe email David your number so that he can text you. Or Aaron, I'm going to read your phone number out loud. I know David can hear me, so David could text this phone number too. Aaron's phone number, if anybody ever needs to text her during a meeting for anything whatsoever, David's looking for a pen and pencil, I can tell, so I want to give it a second, is 720-487-2778. Again, that's 720-487-2778. You can text Erin. She'll text you back and see if she can't get this, get any text issues, chat issues, anything that might not be working for you. All right, here we go. I'm going to share my screen with you. What this is going to be is I'm going to share the official agenda with you because we do need to have some room for public comments at the very end by law. So what you should be looking at in another second or two is a screen that is just a Word document, and it says agenda, and it's actually fairly boring. So sorry, Coconut Creek, but this particular agenda is kind of, straightforward. It's the legal agenda. So I'm going to look at Colleen for a second since I can see you. Colleen, can you see this on your screen? Nod your head. Okay, great. So what we're going to do is talk a little bit about the work we've done so far, the progress report. I want to talk to you all about the vision, mission, and values. I want to talk about goals, outcomes, and strategies, next steps. And at the end, we'll have room for public comment. So if anybody joins us that's not a member of the advisory group, Colleen, please.
Cheryl, we're way up on the top. You might want to make it like 100%. Like, see,
right, we're actually not going to use this, but I appreciate that. I just need to show it to you for a second, and I will totally make the next one big. Thank you.
Okay, got it.
And then if we get joined by anybody from the public, then we will have public comment at the end. We'll actually open public comment regardless. We'll see if there is, and if not, we'll just close her down. But as the advisory group, you are welcome to go ahead and participate, ask questions at any time, any place, anywhere. A good way to
Okay.
ask questions for me is to go ahead and pop it into your chat box, and or you can just like wave at me, because again, I can see most of you at the time. If for some reason I don't see you, then do go ahead, unmute yourself and say, hey, Cheryl, hey, Cheryl, hey, Cheryl. Hopefully that'll work for you. One thing Erin might need to do is she might need to mute you all from time to time if there's any sort of background noise. But as far as my meetings go, it's helpful to me if you're on video, because of course the visual of waving is super helpful. If you need to take a break, we will have a break about an hour into this. If you need to take a break, please go ahead and take a break. If you need to turn your camera off, turn your camera off. If there's anything that you need to do to make yourself more comfortable doing this meeting, you do that, because it's important to me that you guys are comfortable. So I think that's the most important part of the meeting for me. All right. So again, this is my agenda that I'm going to work with, which is exactly the same as the city's agenda. It's just an easier version for me because Erin and I are going to take notes. So what I want to do first is talk to you really quick about the fact that we have another meeting. You all have been invited to this meeting. It's on April 7th. It's at the same time frame, 11:30 to 1:30. And that's where we're going to wrap all of this strategic plan conversation up. We're going to get all of your feedback. We're going to go ahead and do everything that we can possibly do to make sure that the advisory group has the input that you might want to have into this particular strategic plan. I would also suggest that make plans to attend the next community forum on the 28th. That's at 5:30. That's when you're actually going to get to see the draft of the strategic plan in all its glory. So we've got the April 28th community meeting where we're going to share that. Karen, I saw your comment. If you haven't seen an invite, we will get an invite to you this morning for that April 7th meeting. And I know Erin's working with David, but Erin will probably get around to sending that invite out while we're in this meeting for the April 7th meeting. So we'll send out another invite to the advisory group for that meeting. And then at some point in May, we're hoping in May, the commissioners will get a chance to consider adoption of the strategic plan. So that's the last piece of timeline that we have. We may want, that draft of our plan at the end of April. We want a really good opportunity to work through that. So we may need to push out getting you guys a draft. It's our goal to get you a draft before the community meeting so that the advisory group can kind of give us feedback. We can improve it before we go back out to the community. So we won't see it by the 7th, but you might see it later on this month, certainly before the 28th. So that's another way you guys are really important. You get the first look at all of this information. All right, I'm going to share a screen again with you. What you're going to see is the work that happened at the community meeting. What I want to say before I show this to you is this is not a finished drawing. And what I'm going to ask you to do is kind of take a look as I walk you through it. And I want to make sure that you, as an advisory group, see all of the themes that you wanted to have captured for Vision 2030. So that's what we're focused on, is more of a, do you see what needs to be in here? We can make it look better. We can add colors later, but I want to make sure that what you're looking at is what you wanted to see in terms of common themes. So what you should be seeing now is the big picture screenshot of what the graphic recording artist did during our meeting on the 23rd with the community. If you were there, and I think most of you, all of you were there, you heard the types of questions we asked. So the first question we said, what is it, no matter what, that the community wants to preserve in the future? No matter what else changes, no matter what else happens, what is it that you want to preserve? And so what we came through with was we want to be a small town. We want to feel like we're a small town. We want to feel welcoming. We want to feel friendly. We want to both feel clean and we want it to look clean. We want to have a lot of green spaces, like deliberately preserved green spaces. That could be parks, that could be your open space. We want the community to feel safe. We have a heavy emphasis on safety in our community. And what that meant was that, we have our own police department. And I know y'all have been talking about the fire department too. So that's certainly a piece of this. And then there was this issue of community events. Those are really important. We want to preserve that small town feel through our community events. And the people that are drawn here represent what we would call diversity, ages, young to older, diverse backgrounds, diverse cultures, people who have different work, people who do things differently, think differently, may talk differently, might have different languages. But that's part of what y'all told us that you wanted to preserve with the small town feel. So let me stop with preserve for a second and just check your eyeballs here up and down. We want to make sure that this captured the main themes. And I will say this, that when we did our survey and our interviews, these were the main themes we saw too. All right. Then, as you all know, if you were there, we went into breakout rooms and we asked a series of questions in those breakout rooms. The questions were, what would you like it to look like? What would you like it to feel like? And this was all for an eye to the future. You may look, Coconut, I've been there, right? So Coconut Creek does look like this to me right now. Coconut Creek does feel like this to me right now. But this is also important to say that 10 years from now, we also want it to look and feel like this. So part of it's the preserve, and part of it is in 2030, what's going to look differently than it looks like today. And this was all focused on the positive. I know that everybody can easily come up with some potential negatives or potential improvements, but this was all focused on the positive because this is a vision of our future. So when you see here, for example, sort of right in the middle here, you see this concept of the main street, right? And we talk about having local jobs, having local shops, not just chain stores, but unique, smaller local shops. We talk about having a lot of dining options, and you can see there are people eating outdoors here. People of all ages walking up and down. The idea that it's easy to get across town. In terms of transportation, if you were at the meeting, I heard a lot of, that we would really like to apply smart technology to pretty much everything we're thinking about doing. And one of those things was about transportation. We would like to make sure that we have a look ahead to the types of transportation that might be out there 10 years from now. And that might be, who knows, right? We know driverless cars are highly likely, but there may be other forms of transportation that we haven't even thought of yet that might be available. So we talk about public transportation as well as what the language in the planning world is multimodal. So it might be bicycles, it might be scooters, it might be, who knows? I don't know. It could be anything that you can think of in terms of easy transportation across the city of Coconut Creek in all ways. And that it's connected. So that your main street obviously will be connected to something like the promenade. It might be connected to the casino. We had one conversation where there might be a connection all the way, who knows, all the way out to the beach by 2030. And so this idea of your new main street, your new downtown was a central theme in what we talked about. And also the idea of, in that right-hand side, you'll see the issue around this issue of sustainability. Which we think actually means that people want us to be environmentally green sustainability, right? So in terms of smart growth, I think it's undeniable that people realize there might be some growth in Coconut Creek, but we strongly, strongly heard this issue of wanting it to feel like a small town. So in terms of being smart about your growth, smart about where the growth happens, smart about what the growth might look like. And that this issue of being green in terms of your initiatives. So not just energy initiatives, but like the electrical vehicles conversation that came up multiple times. People mentioned solar, people mentioned wind. There were lots of opportunities, I think, that were mentioned for the city to potentially have these green initiatives. And I'm going to keep sort of scanning all of your videos. Saima, I know you just joined us. That's awesome. If you are on a computer, could you just enter your name in the chat box for us so that we keep a record of our attendance? And then you can see over here, we're going to change this up a little bit because this was really trying to capture this little sign that says airport and events. It was trying to capture the idea of the location of Coconut Creek. One of the reasons that people like living there or like having a business there is it's easy access to all sorts of things. It's easy access to, say, Sawgrass. It's easy access to get to the beaches. It's easy to get to the Everglades. Your location is one of the things that people feel very strongly about in terms of what they like about Coconut Creek. So that was an important piece. And then this last piece that she drew was this issue of continuing to make sure that we had opportunities for active engagement with our community. And we use the word fun. I don't know if that word's going to change or not, but we use the word fun to try to capture that initially. And you heard a lot of conversation if you were there about, let's have some gathering spaces. That might be part of your main street. That might be additional gathering spaces that are just for people to hang out and enjoy themselves. It might be active spaces like a sportsplex or some type of amphitheater to hear music. There might be active spaces around other types of cultural opportunities. Certainly, we heard a lot about having the parks be, again, back to that smart tech, that the parks might have kiosks that are interactive with people where you can learn and that they're educational. And there might be, say, a pathway or a walkway that's engaging, that gives people something to do as well as just walk along the pathway. And then this overarching issue of making sure that you continue to have green space as part of the community, clearly a very strong value. So that's what we heard at the community meeting. I'm going to leave this up for another 30 seconds or a minute, and I'm just going to be quiet. I want you all to have a chance to think to yourself and maybe even jot down a note about something that you might see that's missing. I will say that this issue right there about good schools, this might get moved around, but I think it was important to people to, number one, recognize the fact that you do have some really great educational opportunities in Coconut Creek, but there may be an opportunity there as well for, the city doesn't really deal much with schools, right? I mean, there's not much that the city of Coconut Creek itself can do except to partner with and support the schools. But that was an important piece, I think, that came up. So I'm just going to be quiet for 30 seconds or so, let you guys take a look at this and see if there's anything missing that you as an advisory group felt strongly might be an opportunity for the city to have as part of their future. If there is, just take a minute and jot it down. All right, here we are back again. I just want to open it up for comment, and Aaron and I will both take some notes. So again, we're talking about the vision of the future, at least 10 years, 2030, 2031. But if you want to think further than that, that's okay. In your opinion, as an advisory group, is there anything missing? If there is, hold up your hand. I see Abby's already got this system down. So, and I'll just call on you when I see your hand. I want to make sure I give everybody an opportunity. So Abby, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think that one of the components that I saw that was missing was communication. And that's communication within residents as well as communication back and forth with the city. I think that in order for us to achieve all those goals that are on that amazing drawing that we saw, that communication is key, communication and connection within the residents. And so I just didn't see anything that spoke to that.
So when you think to the future, what might that communication look like? I know that's an awkward question, right? Who knows? We might be sending up holographic images, right? But any ideas that might flesh that out a little bit more, Abby?
I think that, and I wish I had a crystal ball into the future, but rather than relying on external social media, Facebook, Twitter, et cetera, maybe some sort of internal city communication, citywide, so that residents and city officials, city employees, that dialogue is not managed by social media, Facebook, whatever that is bombarded with all of the other influencers. So something that's more internal that makes us unique and connected.
Thank you. Any other thoughts from the advisory group? I see Colleen's got her hand up. Donna, I see you came off mute, so I'm going to check in with you just in case, Donna, in a second. But Colleen, please go ahead.
Hi, hi, Abby. I agree with you on that. And like recently, we've received like 2 flyers from the city. Some would be like on our for grass, like tips. It's an actual flyer that we've received. It would be like maybe from the mayor or whatever. And it would be something maybe like that Sharon would put something in. It was very informative. Maybe on the wall, there was 2 of them that came through. I can't remember what they were, but I really enjoyed reading those. And then also the other thing that I was thinking too, that I didn't see on here, was neighborhood enhancements, especially like down the road. A lot of neighborhoods are going to need enhancement, because right now we're in pretty good shape, but down the road, we're all going to need a little help. That's what I'm thinking right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Donna, I just want to make sure, since I can't see your face, if you had anything, I'm going to ask you specifically.
No, thank you. But that drawing was beautiful, and I think it really captured Coconut Creek. And we have a lot of that already, and to keep it going, I think is great.
Yeah, from a professional point of view, from a consultant point of view, of course, this is what we do. We go around the country and talk to various communities about the vision for the future. And one of the most telling things about my work with your community is absolutely people have come up with some things that could be improved or worked on. But for the most part, it's a striking difference between you and places around the country is you all have just this deep pride and respect for and love for Coconut Creek as it is today. So I think we're seeing a lot of that too, which is great. All right. I just want to check in with Yvonne to see if Yvonne had any questions on the communication piece before we move on. And if you don't, I'm sure everyone knows Yvonne, but just in case.
I just was wondering if what Colleen was talking about was our new Coco News. Colleen, is this what you're talking about? Okay.
Nice. I'm going to make a little note there. Coco News.
Yeah, that's really good.
Okay. All right, then. What I wanted to check in with you guys about now, and I'm going to drop it into the chat box so you can all sort of see it at the same time, is the city did adopt a vision statement, right? This is just a statement that tries to capture in some words what you saw in the picture. Of course, they didn't have the picture at the time. This was 10 years ago in your Vision 2020. So this was the statement they came up with. And my question when you see it, when I hit enter, is do you feel a strong need to change, revise, update this statement? Or do you in fact think it captures the intent of what the vision for the future of Coconut Creek is? So I dropped it in the chat box. I want to make sure that for Donna, I know on your computer you can see the chat, but I'm going to read it out loud. It says, the city of the future with a personal touch. So think about that for a minute or two. And you can, Karen, There was that was Abby agreeing with Karen about the weekly cocogram. Okay, awesome. Thanks. If you have any strong desire to revise, to update, to restate this vision for the future, I'd like to hear about it. We might not be able to do it today, but we will definitely get back around to it with you if you strongly feel that we need to make some changes there. So accepting the employees, although Eric, you count, anybody on the advisory group strongly feel that you want to sort of update or redo this?
Sorry.
That's okay.
Well, we're not the city of the future. I think that I don't like the future. I mean, I love the personal touch, but I think that we could come up with something different.
Okay, so you like the personal touch is what I heard, but I'm going to put quotes around that as we're taking notes here. But it's something about that statement of the future. Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to chime in? Karen, please.
I agree with Colleen on that. I feel like a city of the future is something that is putting a lot of investment into progressive technologies and stuff, whereas we're trying to do the sustainability and, the shopping, the parks, the things like that are an old time feel with modern conveniences and modern sustainability projects. I think that City of the Future looks something like you'd see at Disney or something like that, not something that you'd see in Coconut Creek.
Thank you. What I captured there was the issue of being like the future would imply something, and what you think it's implying something that's not what you want to imply. In other words, you're saying that the cities for the future is more, the city of Coconut Creek for the future is more focused on sustainability, shopping and parks, but we want to keep that sort of old time feel. We do want modern technology, obviously, but it's not like, let me paraphrase. We're not going to be like the Jetsons, in other words. Okay. Any other thoughts in through there about that vision statement? All right. We may not have an opportunity to work on it today, but we will bring it back to you with some proposed changes. And typically the way I like to do this, by the way, is send you an email with a proposed change, let you have some time to think about that, and then come back and talk as a group about it so that you can share your ideas. While I love email, I find that meetings like this are best because if you heard something, you're like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to say and I just couldn't figure out how to say it, or, oh, I hadn't thought of that. So perfect. All right. So what I do want to do for a moment here is brainstorm with you what I would call outcomes. In other words, when you look at that beautiful drawing that Elise did, when you think about all the questions on the survey, and if you were one of the individuals I interviewed, the types of feedback and the give and take, the conversation that we had, our last advisory group meeting, one of the things that we're going to try to do is figure out what it is we're trying to achieve in terms of outcomes of this strategic plan. I will tell you one outcome that I heard strong and loud, and I've written it down that way, is that we want to preserve the small town look and feel of Coconut Creek. Period. End of story. I think we can all have a definition of that. We can describe it maybe in slightly different terms, but I think that's a very strong outcome of what the city is trying to do with the strategic plan. So think about it like that. If I said to you, again, 10 years from now, 2030, it's a mix of all the things we've talked about so far. It's what you want to preserve. It's what you want to see, all kind of glommed together. What are some of the other outcomes that you absolutely want to see happen as a result of this plan for the future? This is more of a brainstorm, so you're welcome to just unmute and shout it out or wave your hand to make sure I see you. Again, along the line of preserve the small town look and feel of Coconut Creek, what else is it that you want this strategic plan to achieve? Any thoughts? Karen, go ahead.
Yes, one of the things that I would like to see more of is, as we are going to hopefully more electric vehicles, I would like to see more EV chargers around the city.
Thank you. Anybody else want to see some outcomes driven by this strategic plan?
I think tied in with that old time feel is that connection with our neighbors, that we really make sure that we focus on people and not just places and things, but that there's an investment and compassion and caring with people as well, with our neighbors. So that sense of community. And truthfully, you know, those little touches in Coconut Creek that set us aside from every other city in the nation. There are just some very unique and special things which keep us all here.
Tell me what those are, Abby, to you.
Well, to me, I'm a little partial because I'm sitting on a miniature horse farm. But the fact that I'm really proud of the fact that the only children's grief center that integrates the therapeutic use of horses calls Coconut Creek its home. And to me, those special touches, and so Tomorrow's Rainbow is not the only unique nonprofit or business, for that matter, that really cares about humankind and connection and healing and emotional wellness. And so I think that those little touches that set us apart should really be embraced and encouraged, so that it's not just about business, but it is also about people.
Thank you. Anything else? You're not required to have anything, so this is not like a test. You're not going to be graded or anything. And by the way, when you see this report come out to you, that might make you think of some more things, right? So we still have a little bit of time to work on it. Okay. I want to describe something and then I'm going to share my screen to you. It's something that we call the key areas of focus. The concept here is that, again, you take this big vision that you want to see, you want to feel, this is what we want it to look like in 2030 and beyond. And then you take these outcomes, what's actually going to happen as a result of all this work that we're going to be doing in the next 10 years. And the question becomes, okay, so what are maybe the 4, maybe 6 things that you have to focus on? You absolutely have to focus on as a city government to achieve that, right? If you could only pick, say, 6 things for the city to do to make that a reality, based on the conversations we've had so far, based on the surveys, based on the community meeting the other night, we have created 5 of them. And I want to bounce them off of you and see if they resonate with you, if I've picked the right words, if I've said it the right way, and also if I've missed anything. So I'm going to share my screen with you and I'll walk through them first so that you understand what I was trying to say. And then I'll ask you if we can improve these. And the second question will be if I missed anything when we did this. So again, the background here is that we took all the survey data, all the interview data, that work you just saw from the community meeting. And I said, what are those key things that if I said to the city government, if you focused on creating a sustainable environment, and by that I mean, you know, manage those things like sustainable electricity, sustainable energy, and adding in what Karen said, right? That would naturally lead down the road, down the road, that would lead to, you know, things like EV charging stations, or the things we heard in the community meeting, like for driverless cars, we better be building more drop-off locations that are safe so those driverless cars can pull out of traffic and drop people off. So that's what I meant when I said sustainable environment. The second thing is this concept of dedicated public safety. Now, public safety might mean different things to different people, and that's why I didn't write dedicated police or dedicated police and fire. I don't know where you all are going with fire, but I think the concept was that we have a group of city government areas that are dedicated to our public safety and that they're ours. They're unique to Coconut Creek. You know, they belong to us, that kind of thing. So that's what I meant when I said dedicated public safety. I wrote down multimodal transportation. I mentioned that a minute ago, but this is the idea of having that connectivity where people could walk from one end of town to the other, or bike, or ride their scooter, or whatever it happens to be in terms of transportation for them. And also that there was enough public transportation from place to place. And that implies that this is safe. That implies that people want to use it. That implies that it's built in a way that, you know, makes sense. So that's that multimodal transportation. It also, to some extent, implies this, it's easy to get from one side of town to the other because we have all of these opportunities. As Coconut Creek might grow, it may be that the traffic issue continues to grow. And again, you talk about things the city can't control. I can't control who comes through town as a shortcut to access other parts of Florida, right? I can't control that. But what I can do is make it quick and easy for them to get through town so they don't disturb my resident ability to also quickly and easily get through town. Protected open space. This is this concept of both parks as recreation spaces and just green open space that isn't actively programmed at all, but that it's important to the community that it is in fact protected and preserved. This might mean purchasing more open space. It might just mean making sure that the open space that you have isn't developed, but that was a concept. And then the final one I noticed very strongly was this concept of smart growth. As the city grows, because it will grow, how can that growth protect that issue of feeling like a small town, like we're neighbors, like we're connected, like we're welcoming and friendly, that kind of situation. So here it is, my first question. As you look at these 5 main areas, did I say them correctly? Did I use the correct words? Are there ways to improve these 5 areas? So first, I'm just going to ask about each one in order. I'll say, for example, how can I improve sustainable environment? Is there a better way to say that? And have you guys give me some feedback if you have it. Then I'll move to the second, the third, the fourth, and the fifth. And finally, I'll come to the question of, is there something I missed? Is there something else I should have included here as a main priority, a main area of focus for the city? You can tell these are super big picture. A lot could fit underneath here. So here we go. Under the concept of sustainable environments. Did I say that right? Is there a way I can improve that statement? Any thoughts or feedback about that key area of focus? Oh, I'm so awesome. Okay, let me, just kidding. That was a joke. Let me move on to dedicated public safety. As I've described that, is there a way I can improve that? Are there different words I can use? Is there some way I can make that better or improve that for the advisory group? All right, I'm scrolling up and down to catch any movement, but if I miss you, just unmute and holler. Multimodal transportation. I have to be frank, I struggled a little bit with this one. So any help you want to give me here about how to say that better or improve this one?
I think that even though we want multimodal transportation, I don't think people are going to give up their cars that easily. So we have to, I honestly think that we have to plan for the fact that as we do the smart growth section, there are going to be more cars in Coconut Creek because people aren't going to just take the bus because it's available.
Yeah, we certainly see that as an ongoing issue, especially as it relates to traffic, which is why I struggled with this one. What I really am trying to say here is something like, and this is a wrong word too, so I'm not suggesting this is the right word, but accessible, which means quick, which means easy, which means that the traffic is flowing, which means that in the future we've planned ahead so that it feels really easy to get around town. I'm trying to capture that somehow, and I'm just not there yet. And I just don't, despite the fact, like you mentioned, Karen, people might still be using cars and maybe even more so. Or there might be public transportation, or there might even be some new, what I'll call paths or trails. I'm trying to figure out how to say it in a way that would imply that everything is smooth and flowing and easy. And I'm just not sure I've got the right word yet. So as you all think about this moving forward, if you can come up with some words, feel free to drop them in the chat box or, okay, Saima, I see you've got your hand up.
Hi, Sherry, how are you?
I'm
I'm at work, so I'm gonna be, yeah, I'm at work, so I'm gonna keep it simple and quick. So you were talking about the accessible transport, like I know the city bus does not operate on Sundays. Usually people have time on like weekends, especially Sunday, to maybe visit around the city and go around the places. Maybe adding a route on Sunday might help. So I don't know if the city can do anything about that.
Thank you.
So that would be easily accessible.
Yeah. And by the way, I will be getting down to very specific details like that one and like the EV plugins right after our break too. So I'm going to capture all this if you come up with it now, and then we will ask you some very like, what are some projects? What are some things you'd like to see happen? So good. Okay. Before I move on to protected open space, I want to just double check on this transportation thing. All right. So then my next.
I have one more thing, Cheryl.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's Karen. I have one more thing. One of the things that I would like to see is working in conjunction with the Department of Transportation, the FDOT, to make sure that our traffic lights are programmed in such a way that it gives an easier traffic flow. Because sometimes I notice that you know, the traffic lights are too long or too short at certain areas. And so working with FDOT to get those programmed to a better traffic consistency would be a good thing.
Thank you. Okie dokie. Let's see here. Protected open space. Any improvements you can think of in that term that would make it easier to understand or more logical or more reflective of what you all wanted to see as an advisory group? And then finally, smart growth. When we say smart growth, does that resonate with you? Is that, you can understand that? Oh, I've got Saima again, so hold on half a second. Saima, go.
So smart growth, I would suggest to have more digital information, like things that easily accessible for people, that they just put their phones on the barcodes and things like information would come up. Second thing I would suggest, like, I don't know how many charging stations we have for electric cars around the city. So that I would like to see as a smart growth, and it would really encourage people to have smart cars, electric cars.
Perfect. Again, I'm going to capture that, but I'm going to ask you guys right after our 12:30 break for some specific details. So if you do have specific details, hang on to them because I will get there. But for example, if you have to leave early or something, feel free to let me know now too. All right, so having taken a look at these 5 key areas, are we missing anything? So think for a second back to this vision of the future, both the drawing and what you see personally as this vision for the future. The question is, if we told the city government, the city of Coconut Creek, these are the 5 things you really need to drill down on, we really want you to focus on. In other words, for example, these are going to be the things that you see in the budget. But you might not see other things in the budget because these are the most important things. Did we hit the most important things, the most key priorities? They're going to make that vision of the future come to life.
So Cheryl, and I apologize that I wasn't able to attend the last meeting, and I apologize for everybody's time that I'm taking, but I just feel like the component that is still missing is emotional wellness within our residents and the investment in people and humankind and mankind. I don't want to see Coconut Creek become another Columbine or Parkland. And I think that if we don't invest, and I understand that there's a dedication to public safety, but unless we mean the public safety is going to be responsible for emotional wellness. You know, Parkland now has a wellness center in the aftermath of the Parkland shooting. Why would Coconut Creek wait for such a tragedy to invest in the emotional wellness of our residents? And so I apologize that I wasn't here to speak up at the last meeting, but I just feel like it is a huge miss.
Okay. I'm gonna dig down a little bit on this, Abby, to make sure I capture what you're trying to say. So my questions might feel awkward because they probably are, because I'm not quite sure what I'm asking yet. So I'm trying to come up obviously with a thought. So you can see here, I just created something here with the details here. So how do you see the city government playing a role in that? So I know, for example, you mentioned the types of communication that are more personal and less social media based. And I just heard you mention like a physical structure, like an emotional wellness center, like a physical structure. How else do you see the role of the city government coming into play in this area?
Yeah, so perhaps offering incentives for agencies that can, you know, as different businesses, whether they're for profit or not for profit, when they are encouraging emotional wellness, that perhaps there are incentives or ways to encourage those businesses to reside within Coconut Creek, as well as after school programs and just I'm not saying that our government should get involved in people's mental health. What I'm saying is that our government should have a really user-friendly approach to encouraging those for-profit, nonprofit businesses that promote mental health, as well as and making sure that our parks and recs have those components built in as well. I just think that there's a huge opportunity here, and rather than only look at the public safety, so after an event happens, even encouraging the nonprofit and the for-profit community that has that as their mission to collaborate, and maybe the city be a vehicle to promote that collaboration, that connection, so that God forbid when a tragedy does happen, that everybody has a unified front and how to support such an incident versus everybody going off in their different direction and scattering. And so to have that cohesive collaboration in place prior to such a tragedy, and hopefully that prevention so that tragedy never happens.
Okay. And when you were talking, of course, the first thing I typed down was trying to figure out some way to say that, right, in like a headline. And I'm not sure I hit it here, but something about the sense of being connected to your community. And if you have the sense of, say, knowing your neighbor or knowing your community, as well as a support structure, which I think you've described quite well, that the idea is that hopefully you won't have those types of things happen in Coconut Creek because you're connected as a community. But if you can think of a different phrase, or anybody can think of a different phrase than the one that's there in green, of course, we'll get these notes out to you so that you can then kind of spend some time thinking about it. So
to me, it's prioritizing emotional wellness within our residents, and our residents of all ages.
Okay, perfect. All right, then. I'm going to give you just a minute more to kind of take a look at this. We're going to take just a 5-minute sort of stretch rest break so you can get up, turn your computers off. And when we do that, I'll let you know that you'll have a full 5 minutes. We still will be recording during those 5 minutes. So we can talk amongst ourselves for sure if you want to hang out, but just know that it will be recorded as we talk. And as we come back from the break, we'll come back to this. And that's where we're going to start to get specific with goals. What is it, like you've been telling me, like electric chargers and things like that? What is it that you want to accomplish in each of these potential areas? Let me give you just a minute here and see if you have any questions for me before we go on to our break. All right, let's take a full 5-minute break. For my watch, that means we'll be back right at 12:30. If you're back right in through there, not to worry, we will get started right at 12:30. If you want to turn your computers off and take a full break, please feel free to do that. If you want to hang out here, Aaron and I are going to get caught up for a second and make sure we are on the same page, and I'll get prepped for our next one. So I'll see you all in 5 minutes. You can hang out, right? I can see you right now, but if you want to go, you have 5 minutes. Miss Erin, can you join me again? Hey there.
Hi.
So, I'm gonna do this and do this. So Erin, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna copy down the sort of the details of the ideas, right? The more specificity that was created under here.
Mm-hmm.
And I am going to put those under the strategic goals.
Okay.
So that we can start work on, oh, I didn't want to cut that. I want to paste that now. Now I want to copy it so that we can start work there. So that's where I'm headed next, is down to the strategic goals.
Gotcha.
I'm just going to cut and paste those details that we were capturing under each one of those areas.
Mhm.
There.
Can I ask a quick question?
Uh-huh.
So the next advisory, the third advisory group meeting, it says 11:30 a.m. Mountain Time. So I
No,
just wanted-
that's their time. 11:30 their time, which is 9:30 Mountain Time. It's correctly on my calendar. It's correct on my calendar. So let me see who set that meeting up. If it's you, only you can change it.
on your, oh, okay, wait.
So yep, this is my calendar, so I can send
Okay.
it out. I can just cut and paste right now.
No,
I've got it.
that's all right. I can do it.
No, I'm already doing it. I'm
Okay.
literally already doing it.
Okay.
And part of the issue, of course, is that we don't have some of the emails for these individuals. So you'll want to make a note, those individuals that we, oh, stop it. Those individuals that we don't have phone calls for, then of course we will want, our emails for, we will want to call, but you and I can do that later.
Okay.
That would be a note that said, oh, Sheila's joining us. Perfect. Just in time. Sheila likes details.
Mhm.
Hey, Sheila, I see you've joined us. I know you're connecting to audio, but if you would dump your name into the chat box, we are keeping a record of who's here. And as you know, we are recording. So stop that. I talk to my computer. For those of you who don't know me well enough yet to know that I talk to my computer, I do. Okay, let's see what else. I'm going to make this Eastern time. Okay, perfect. Okay, so that should be good to go. We sent out the invite. We have about another minute left on our break or so. All right. When you guys have a chance, come on back and we will finish our next section. So the idea is that with strategic planning, you kind of come from the bigger picture, the vision, all the way down to the little gritty itty bitty details. Something like in the next year, Cheryl will buy 3 electric vehicle charging stations and install them at, I mean, that's how specific it gets toward the end. We're not going to worry about that high degree of specificity. That's really for the staff. What we want to make sure and do is gather enough of your ideas around what you think should happen so that the staff has an idea of what to go research, right? How many more electric vehicle charging stations might we need is a staff question. And they'll need to go off and research that, figure out how to incorporate that if that's where the commissioners decide to go. So I'm still at a fairly high level with you all. But what I want to do next is talk about these goals for each of those areas we just discussed. So we're now working on 6 areas: the sustainable environment, dedicated public safety, this issue of multimodal transportation, the protected open space, the smart growth, and I'm just going to loosely call it connected community for right now. And based on, again, what I had heard so far, what we'd heard from the surveys and the interviews and the community meeting, I threw a few things under here for some strategic goals. And then, of course, you've mentioned a few very specific things that I want to try capture as well. So what I want to do is tell you, if you have something specific, toss it out there. We may not be able to put it in the strategic plan document, but at least we can let the staff know that this is an issue and they can go out and research it and figure out how it fits. So if you do have something super incredibly specific, definitely bring it up. But keep in mind, we're still at a fairly high level. As an advisory group, look at this as giving advice to the commissioners on where they want to go in each of these areas. So having said that, let me share my screen again and I'll show you what I mean. So you should be looking at something that says strategic goals for each area. And here I've got, the sustainable environment. Oops, didn't want to delete that. Instead, I wanted to hit enter. So here's a couple that I clearly saw as part of our overall conversation. And if you have questions about them, I'll stop for a second after I read each one so you can figure out what it is I meant. And then we'll come full circle and see if you have anything to add to here. So under this concept of sustainable environment, I think there were 2 focuses here. One was internal to the city government itself, and one was external. In other words, the community as a whole. So we heard some really specific things here, like community gardens might be part of the sustainable environment issue. Composting might be part of this sustainable environment issue. But I didn't capture that level of specificity here. Instead, I said, promote sustainable practices within city government. So as a government, the issue of creating and promoting sustainable practices internally. That could be anything from the city fleet being electric or solar powered, who knows what might happen in the future, but also the city themselves doing things like making sure they're recycling whatever they're doing internally. And then this external, creating opportunities for the community in environmental sustainability. I know recycling is a hot topic and the staff is now cringing because they told me not to bring it up, but you can't talk about sustainable environment without talking about recycling. Recycling is a painful, expensive process. Let's be very clear. And what role the city has to play in that may or may not come into play in the future. But that's where I kind of left it right now. Big picture sustainable goals. So we can come back full circle and check. I want to see first, any questions about what I did write down?
Cheryl.
Okay. So then my second question is, what else do you see under sustainable environment that might be a goal? Saima wrote something down, and I'm not sure if this applies to sustainable environment, Saima. So I want to ask you, you said convention center for protected and open space? So does that fit under protected and open space, or does that have something to do with sustainable environment? We may have lost Saima. She may have had to go to work. So I'll come back to that. I'm going to assume it's for protected and open space. So the rest of us, under sustainable environment, any of these big picture goals that you'd like to see happen?
Cheryl,
Yes, please. Go ahead.
would this even be applicable, like bulk pickup, which I think that is, I mean, not that we don't pay for it, but to me, I feel that it's a very, all my neighbors take advantage of the bulk pickup on Wednesdays. And I don't know if that would be something that would be part of that, or
Does it have to do with recycling or something like that?
not necessarily, but it's like when people want to get rid of like bushes or even like furniture. This started many, many years ago that we have bulk pickup every Wednesday. And a lot of cities don't have it as often as we do. And I just feel that it's a big benefit to us,
Okay.
you know.
No, it doesn't, you know what, from my perspective, at least right now, let's throw it out there. If it doesn't fit there, we can always put it somewhere else, but I'll definitely capture it. Okay.
Thanks.
Anything else anybody would like to add as these big picture goals for sustainable environment for the city? Now's your chance. I see Karen leaning forward. That's always a sign, right? When somebody like leans into it. Okay. Keep in mind that we're going to send this out to you so that you can take a look. And at our meeting on the 7th, that's when we're going to want to wrap this up. So, all right. Moving on to dedicated public safety. One of the things that I heard very strongly, especially in the community meeting, was around the issue of the police department and how appreciative everybody was that the police department works very hard to build a relationship within the community. So I tried to capture that as something that was going well, that needed to continue moving forward. And obviously, if you think about that logically, that could mean all sorts of things. That could mean, any of these community-based policing programs, relationships with the schools, how the officers in the police department, get around town, all of that. And then there is this bigger picture issue of maintain the safety of the city in all areas. One of the things that I heard at the community meeting, and that's why I tried to capture this, was many neighborhoods within the city are installing cameras as a safety measure. And the police department is partnering with that in the sense of they are sharing data with the police department in order to make sure that if something does happen, that the police department can use that camera footage to help assist in the safety of the community. So that's what I was trying to capture with this statement. So first of all, any questions about what I did capture? Any ways to make that more clear? And then secondarily, what else should go under this dedicated public safety area that you as an advisory group would like to make sure the city consider in terms of their goals?
Would this be a good place to, or is this too micro, to ensure that the city invests in racial equity within, not only within our police department, within our residents as well? Because so far I haven't heard anything there. And I just want to make sure that that Coconut Creek is never a community where the spotlight is on for not promoting racial equity and making sure that that our practices reflect who we are as a community.
Yeah, I think it could go here. I think potentially, wow, how did that happen? I think it can also go in a couple of other areas, like down here under this, being connected as a community too. I think it could go a couple of spots, but definitely let's capture that. All right, then. Again, this isn't the last time you'll see it. You'll have about a week to kind of process this. And by the way, I would encourage you as an advisory group to ask other people, right? If you're thinking to yourself, well, I wonder what my neighbors would think about this. Feel free. That's what you're there for as an advisory group, is to gather additional information from the people you hang out with, your friends, your neighbors, your families, your service groups, your nonprofits. So under this issue of transportation, I captured what you said. What I had originally said was ensure opportunities for safe and walkable connectivity. And to me, that was the paths that connect things that are broad and wide enough that meet a city standard that would allow, people on bikes or scooters, pushing strollers or in a wheelchair or walking would feel like they had enough room and space and that was safe. They didn't feel uncomfortable walking from space to space. And planning ahead for transportation technology and advances. And part of this was driverless cars. Part of this was what you guys already mentioned was this traffic lights timed and programmed for traffic flow. That takes a significant investment in software. That's a lot of cost involved in there. And again, in some cases, as you've already noted, that the city doesn't often control that. That might be FDOT, right? The Florida Department of Transportation that has to make that investment. But still, if you plan ahead, and some of the things that you guys also mentioned, I caught that Sunday transportation from SAIMA in terms of bus routes, and I also captured it under routes that make sense. And then I was just trying to add some notes here about what I've heard expressed. So any questions about that or any additions under this multimodal or transportation issue? Oh, I should probably type in here capture it here too, EV charging stations elsewhere, but I captured it under smart growth too, but it doesn't hurt to capture it multiple times. All right, Donna, I'm just going to trust you'll yell out if you have something. So moving on to protected open space. And I'm going to ask Saima here. She's typing into the chat box. Saima typed in a convention center for protected and open space. And I'm going to ask just a clarification question here, Saima, about convention center. Is this like almost, for lack of a better word, like an educational museum that's set up where people can come to learn about open space, why it's important, how to protect it? Or is this actually like a convention center where people would hold conventions in the city of Coconut Creek that were focused on open space? So while Saima might be thinking about that, the other thing I did there was write down purchase additional open space within the city. And keep in mind, a lot of this stuff is county, the partnerships with the county. Certainly, purchase is a fairly strong word to write in here. And then this issue that I heard multiple times about creating active open space for multi-use activities. What I meant when I said that was, as opposed to say a park with a playground for children, it would be open space, but it's programmed open space in the sense that you could have a barbecue there. You could rent the space for a barbecue or a family gathering. There could be like an impromptu soccer game, but it's not a soccer field with bleachers and stadiums and lights. It's in fact open space that you can program it for different types of activities, and it's active, but there typically are very few structures in a space like that. So that's what I meant. So I'm going to check in with Saima verbally. Again, she might be busy at work and can't hop on board here, but if there were anything Saima wanted to add to her comment there, she might even be off now. She might have had to go. Does anybody else have anything around protected open space? Again, I think your community gave us some really great feedback here. So they did a good job in the survey and in the community meeting. Smart growth. One clear, absolutely no question about it, is the community wants to complete that Main Street development project. The city has been making sure that they are very, very deliberate and intentional about picking a partner to develop that with. They want it to have the right partner. They want it to look right. They want the right things to be there. And sometimes you just have to wait quite some period of time to do that. So that was a strong feeling from the community that they would love to see that project move forward. And here's something important about smart growth. And I'm going to go into some detail on this for just a second so you can understand where I was headed. I wrote down maintain an appropriate revenue level to support community needs and desires. So for example, something we heard in the area of growth was that the community strongly feels that single family homes are the most appropriate type of residential development. It was almost a hard period, end of story conversation that I heard, which, and that's fine. There are consequences as a result of that. One of the most obvious ones that you probably already know is that single family homes typically are more expensive to purchase than, say, a rental apartment or a townhome or a condo. So inherently, the cost of homes, the value of the housing stock in Coconut Creek, will continue to increase both in value and in cost to purchase, which has its own consequences. But also, single family homes are more expensive for the city to service, right? Water taps, sewer taps, roads, those types of things tend to be more expensive for single family homes than they are for other types of light industrial or business manufacturing. So just knowing that, what's implied in this statement, so I want to be really clear, is that taxes have to be at an appropriate level to accomplish that. And everybody wants low or lower taxes, but taxes have to be at a rate that's appropriate to maintain the level of service that the community has stated they want. And this community has very high expectations for that service, very high expectations. So leaving that aside, you guys also talked to me about the charging stations for electric cars and to have digital information that's easily accessible. So any questions? Karen,
Cheryl.
Karen, go. Yeah.
All right. I guess I wasn't at the meeting where people were like single family homes are the way to go. But if we want to have a diverse and vibrant community, you have to have rentals, you have to have condos. I think single family homes are only one part of it. You have to have a mix in order to have a diverse and vibrant community. So I think that focusing on single family homes is going to take away from the diverse community that is here.
Anything else in this area?
I just want to say I appreciate that feedback, Karen, because I think that maybe a diverse amount of the community wasn't represented in that thought. People that want to make sure that their property values continue to increase and soar. I actually don't see that that's who Coconut Creek is. So I'm kind of interested that's, I would say that's an investment decision, that's a money decision over a community feeling and connectedness and diversity decision. So thank you for bringing that up, Karen.
Yeah, and y'all can definitely go look at the survey results. Obviously they're anonymous in terms of names, but you can see ages, you can see income levels, you can see areas of the city that they lived in that took the survey. And that might give you some more insight into that answer. From my perception only, single family housing was strongly tied to this concept of a small town feel. You know, does the town feel like a small town? And if you see a lot of apartment buildings and condos and the visual look and feel of those apartment buildings and condos seem to come into play with that. And that's just additional information. I'm just trying to share what I think I heard where that was coming from. And the people that I talked to on the interview process side, I would suggest to you that that was very diverse, both racially, culturally, age-wise, length of time in the community, whether they were a business owner or a resident, whether they were a homeowner or not. And that was definitely the feedback we got in the interviews as well. A very, very strong preference for single family housing. Again, neither right nor wrong. I'll give you an example. I work with a community in terms of their strategic planning, and they have unequivocally stated that their maximum population End of story. Not going to have any conversation about it as 50,000 people, period. They're just not going to grow anymore. And of course, they can control that by buying up land for development. So they own the land and they simply won't allow it to be developed. And therefore, and they can also zone the land in that city to be just for certain types of housing. So they can, in fact, control the population. And their reasoning behind that is no more or no less sound than a reasoning behind a diverse range of housing stock, right? So there's no right or wrong to it. There's no best or worst about it. It's just a statement. But it does have consequences, or I guess I'll say consequences is kind of a negative sounding word, right? It does have unintended consequences that you just need to think through to see how that happens. So.
But Cheryl, I also just hate to have conflicting goals in the smart growth category, such as complete the Main Street Development Project, which is intended to be dense. I mean, is based on a design standard of smart density, which is in single family homes.
Can you let everybody know who's talking, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. This is Sheila.
That's all right. It's just because we can't see you. So Sheila is talking about something that I don't know if everybody knows, but you've seen maybe the designs for Main Street. They are multi-story designs. And Sheila, are you implying that there are going to be multi-story apartment complexes in the Main Street development?
There are already approvals in place for multi-story design apartments. There are land use entitlements in place. So I just want to make sure that we don't put forward a vision that is unrealistic and legally unachievable.
Well, you don't see anything in here that says single family homes only. There is nothing within this work we're doing right here today that says single family homes only.
Okay.
I brought that up because it was a very strong feeling in the community, and what the advisory group or what the city staff or what the commissioners choose to do with that feedback is obviously entirely up to you guys.
Okay.
Does that help, Sheila?
Yes, I just was trying not to weigh in, trying to stay undercover.
People to know that there are already approvals for additional multifamily housing,
Yeah.
you know, within the city.
Yes.
Right. It's like mixed use. But Cheryl, where was that? Was that at the community meeting? Because that wasn't on the last meeting we had, the single family. Where did that come up? That was at the community meeting?
Can you, for those of you who are not on video, could you say your name before you speak?
Oh,
That would be
it's
awesome.
Colleen. It's Colleen.
Hi, Colleen.
Hi.
Yes, it was at the community meeting. It was mentioned briefly, but when you look at the surveys and when you look at the interview report, you can see that was a strong theme from the people who answered the surveys. And a lot of the surveys are open-ended, right? So you could have typed, if you took the survey, you know this, you could type in whatever you wanted to tell us in many areas in that survey. And we did not ask about single family housing. We did not ask about housing stock. That was not a specific question at all. So that tells me that when, and again, you have pointed this out, which I think is a fair statement, whoever took the survey answered the survey, right? You did not get 61,000 people answering the survey. So whoever answered the survey, that's just one piece of information. And that's why it's so important to have you guys as the advisory group give us this feedback about, hey, we want to have a mix of housing stock to keep the diversity. Because when we come back out with this plan, and I'm going to make this up for a second. I'm going to stop sharing so you can see me. I'm going to make this up for a second. Let's say that the plan says strongly as part of our community issues that we want to have a diverse community, which includes a diverse mix of housing stock, a diverse mix of ages, a diverse mix of racial identification, a diverse mix of cultural backgrounds, a diverse mix of education, whatever diverse might mean, which it means all those things. Then we can support that based on the fact that, you know, we've had this conversation with you as the advisory group, regardless of what the survey says, or regardless of what the interview says, that this is the way the community is proceeding. Because, and then you guys can individually have that conversation with your neighbors who say to you, hey, Karen, I think single family housing is the way Coconut Creek ought to go, because that's the only way we're going to protect our small town feel. Karen can say, hey, I was on that advisory group meeting. I was a part of that group. And here's our perspective. My perspective on it is that, right, with a diverse mix of housing, we will attract a diverse population, which is part of what makes Coconut Creek a great place to
Right.
live and part of
That's
our
good.
small town feeling, right?
Mhm.
So. Other thoughts about that? Because I think it's a really important point. Okay. The final one we had was, again, I don't quite know what to call it. I know that Abby's been giving me some thoughts. And what I'm trying to do is stay pretty high level with it, as opposed to being specific in the title. So I just, again, titled it Connected Community. And here's all the notes that I took underneath that about prioritizing emotional wellness with residents of all ages, maybe a wellness center, like a physical structure, incentives for agencies that do this kind of work. Let's attract businesses to town that have a focus on this issue, funding after school programs, neighborhood connections. To me, this communications fits in here too. Parks and Rec programming that focuses on this issue, being proactive, collaboration and connection. So again, my question for the group is there anything that we can add to this issue of being connected as a community with the background drop of, we want our community to not have the issues that other communities are facing, whether it's the racial unrest and divisiveness, whether it's a community tragedy, whatever that is, we don't want that to happen here. And this is what we want to do around that. Any thoughts about that?
I do. It's me,
Colleen,
Colleen
please.
again.
I can
I
see
have-
you now, Colleen.
Okay, so I think that we should also include in here what Abby went for is like youth groups. We used to have those a long time ago, like for the youth, but I don't see that like identified individually in here.
Now, when you say youth groups, is that like a youth programming, or is it like, I'm making this up, like the Boys and Girls Club? What is it?
No, like at the rec center, we used to have like different clubs for the kids, you know, that maybe between the ages of 12 and 15 that still, they can't get a job. You know, they still have like, they're bored. They need something to do. Something, that's what I'm thinking more like for the youth, that age.
Okay. Anything else anyone can think of? All right, I'm gonna downsize this just a hair because I do want the staff to be able to have a minute or two here to do a couple of things. Number one, staff, any questions you have about what any of this might mean, an awesome time to ask the advisory group while you have them as a captive audience. Or like Sheila just did, is there any information you can share with the group that might be helpful to them that would allow them to, you know, make more improvements to this document? So let's just sort of upsize it again for a second and look at sustainable environment. So by the way, advisory group, if you have some other thoughts that come up here, that's fine too. But for the staff, any questions for the advisory group about these issues around sustainable environment, or anything that the staff could add that might be helpful?
Not about that topic, just seeing overall, I'm not sure, I wasn't part of the first discussion, community input meeting, but what I've heard in other areas, I'm not seeing here, and maybe you can advise me as to maybe why that didn't land here, which is arts and culture.
Ah, okay. So for the advisory group, what we heard a lot of in the interviews, we see it in the survey, and we saw it a little bit in the community meeting for sure, but just a little bit. And that's the issue of, well, like, for example, you saw the amphitheater show up on the vision, right? The graphic vision that Elise drew. Well, we heard a lot of conversation too around like in the Main Street development that we want that to be cultural, have some cultural opportunities. Maybe that's, I don't know, maybe it's a museum, maybe it's a bunch of art galleries, maybe it's, you know, artist in residence, kind of creative space, maker space. That those types of things kind of came up. So I think you're right, Yvonne. We did not capture that here, and I don't think it's a bad place to put here. So let's stick it there, and I'll come back and ask the advisory group, like I totally forgot your name already, what you think about that. Any other staff feedback about this area, questions, comments?
Well, speaking as a business in Coconut Creek that did create a piece of public art, I think it should be something that is incentivized because the city can get a lot of feedback and participation with incentivizing things like public art and culture.
Good point.
So okay.
Cheryl, my question is that a subset of sustainable environment, or is arts and culture a focus area, a strategic goal unto itself?
It could be its own. Absolutely. I don't think there's any right or wrong way. It seems like a hard fit under sustainable environment. It feels like it might be maybe under smart growth, or maybe, like you said, under its own, for sure. I'm going to put a little.
I heard in my groups a lot of focus on culture and cultural events, and that might be a broader, might make more sense as a specific goal.
Okay, perfect.
Hey Cheryl, this is Keisha. I agree with Sheila. I think that's almost its own standalone.
Okay.
Just kind of piggybacking off of the arts, culture, and recreation umbrella, because there's so many things, even recreationally, that aren't captured here. That I know was like, that was such a huge topic, and it was talked about extensively, from events to things for the kids and things like that. So I feel like it's kind of missed on the strategic goals area.
Perfect.
I don't see where it would really be captured.
It might fit, this is Karen, it might fit under connected community to get along with, you know, the strides we're making with unity in our community and being connected, and the diversity and the cultural aspects of it. And then you just expand that to include the arts and other cultural programs. So I think if you're going to try to stick to, you know, maybe the 5 topics, it might be better suited under connected community if it wasn't one by itself.
Thank you, Karen. And I think Abby put something in there that agrees with that last category. That might be where it goes. Okay.
But that mind-body connection, I think it, you know, promoting arts and culture and recreation just goes hand in hand with that mind-body connection and emotional wellness.
Makes sense.
I agree with Abby. I think that is a big part that gets overlooked a lot. I can tell you, looking at our mural every day when I come to work is the highlight of my day.
Yeah, it's nice.
Let's stick it down here then, keeping in mind that, you know, we definitely have an opportunity to continue this conversation. And when you see it, kind of, I'll clean this up for you, right? I'll make it look better, hopefully. And hopefully we can see when you think about it for a while if it still fits there. So I'll drop it down there under that last one. All right. Anything under dedicated public safety from the staff, or obviously from the advisory group as well? Is there anything we might have missed? Any questions you have? Okay. This issue of
maybe enhanced communications could fit under there.
Sure. I think there are going to be some things, and I'm going to mention those at the very end. We're calling them basically adaptive strategies, which is what tools are you going to use no matter what across the board in every one of these areas that's only going to make them better. I think a couple of them have come up already. Communication is clearly one of them. Across all of these areas, the communication structure is going to have to be, strong and consistent and relevant. Another one, and it's one that Abby brought up, that is typically an adaptive strategy across the board, is to make sure that you're inclusive, right, in everything that you do, so that your community feels like they're a part of it, that they were taken into consideration, and that they feel welcomed as part of the work that you do. So I'm going to write it here for sure. And I think maybe you'll see it as an adaptive strategy. And again, those strategies apply like across all 5 or 6 of these areas, however many we end up with. Okay, multimodal transportation. Anything else under here that the staff can talk about, think about, add, share that might be helpful? I can make this a little larger too. Woo! There we go.
And I don't know if it's necessarily appropriate or not, but one of the sort of big picture items related to multimodal transportation is to develop strong relationships with the other transportation partners, the DOT, the Broward County Transit, some of the.
Got it. Cool. All right. Protected open space. As a former city
Right.
employee, I'm struggling with this word that I wrote in, so I'll own it. I don't want to tie the city's hands, because that's not the only way to have additional open space, right? So there's got to be a different word here. I just don't know what it is. It's making me uncomfortable.
Acquire.
I was going to say acquire, yeah.
I was going to say that too. Yeah.
Woohoo! Thank you for people that have better words than I do. Anything else from the staff? Questions, or the AG group think of anything in this area that might be helpful?
I'm just not understanding what convention center for protected and open space, what that means.
Yeah, and I think I'm gonna have to reach out to Saima, because I think she had to go. She was at work and she was just typing it into the chat. So let me make let me make this italicized, and let me need more definition and info from Saima. That will remind me to reach out to her and have her maybe send me a quick email that I can share with the group that might be helpful. Okay. Smart growth. Complete the Main Street development project. Anything in there? Again, staff, I think that duly noted as what Sheila said earlier around smart growth, that the city is already planning to have this higher density residential type development as part of this mixed use project. So I'm going to ask if anybody feels comfortable sort of making a statement about this issue of a mix of housing stock. I don't want to put it in there if you don't want it to go in there, but I do want to ask the advisory group and or the staff if you have any thoughts in this area.
Is that when you talk about to keep diversity, are you talking about the diversity in housing, or are you talking about diversity in population?
Advisory group, that's a question.
When I mentioned that, I'm thinking of the fact that when you're younger, you can't afford a single family home. You usually rent to start, then maybe buy a condo or a townhouse, and then you go on to a single family home as you get older and you can afford it. So I'm talking about ages, and also people that are working in lower income jobs. They don't want to live in the next city. They want to live here. You need to have a diversity of housing stock, so you have a diversity of price points to that housing.
Okay, I think as long as we define it like that, then that makes sense.
And I feel like the word keep means that we're happy with what we have. And I think the word should be encourage diversity.
Perfect. Okay. I like the idea of asking for additional definition, because when we come out to the community with this on April 28th, it is highly likely somebody's going to ask that question. So either I want to be prepared to answer it, or hopefully maybe even a member of the advisory group will feel comfortable answering that question. So just a heads up.
So one thought is under smart growth is to layer in, I know we've talked about transportation, but to add here, something that encourages multimodal transportation. Have we already covered that?
We can totally add it here. It's also covered in its own category.
Right. So maybe not.
Well, Sheila, maybe something like with new housing developments, new high density housing developments, maybe in order to get that housing development, they also have to obtain like a bus stop or something like that to encourage those multimodal transportations. So.
Okay, good. Good. I like it.
Perfect. We'll figure out how to phrase that so it kind of fits that same style, but good. Thank you.
Good idea.
By the way, just because Sheila said it, let's be clear. Just because Sheila said it does not mean that the advisory group has to agree to it, right? You are, after all, the advisory group, Sheila's staff. So keep that in mind. Do not be afraid to disagree in any way, shape, or form. All right. Our last one, I'm going to enter so it stays on the same page for me, was this, again, I'm not sure I've got the right name. Abby keeps lobbying for emotional wellness, but I think that's not a big enough concept for what you guys are trying to create here. So I don't need an answer today, but just something to think about. The title, I'm going to leave it in green, and I'm going to ask you specifically in my email out to you to take a look at it and think about it. But I tried to capture everything that you were talking about, and then also tried to capture some of these additional specificity issues. So staff or anybody on the advisory group, anything on here you want to add, ask questions about, share information about?
Actually, I was thinking maybe instead of connected community health and well-being.
Okay.
Might be something.
Community health and well-being. I like it. And I want to make it unique enough to you guys that it sounds like Coconut Creek. And I don't want to make it so bland that it's something that every single city says in every single strategic plan, right? So any ideas you have, let's capture them all. And you guys can tell me what you like best. So that's not misspelled. Oh, it just doesn't like it because okay, now it'll like it. All right, cool. All right, then let's move on to our final thing of the day. I'm going to stop sharing with you for a second and come back to a full screen. I know we were just joined by somebody. Irvin, we were just joined by you. If you wouldn't mind going ahead and entering your name into the chat box for us, just because we are required to keep a record of everybody that has attended. So it'd be super
okay
to have you do that for us.
Okay, I'll do that.
Thank you.
I'll do that.
The very last thing, and it won't take very long, I talked a while ago about these adaptive strategies. So think of this as the tools or the techniques that the city is going to use across all of the areas we just talked about. So it might be within community health and well-being. It might be within multimodal transportation. It could be in smart growth. Whatever it is, we're going to have to do this to be successful across the board. So you can call them something like, the guiding strategies if you want, where the staff can say to themselves, hey, if I apply these 5 or 6 strategies to this area, then I know I've got a much greater chance of being successful at the good things happening, at achieving the vision. And we're calling those adaptive strategies. So let me share the screen with you because I can think of a few that I've already missed, but I want to show them to you. This concept of applying smart growth approach to all the development projects. So that idea that you guys just brought up, for example, example of this policy that says, hey, if you've got a development going on, then we want it to be smart growth types of development. So we want these multimodal transportation opportunities as part of your development. That's where that came from. This issue of communication, which has been brought up a few times. And I will tell you, everybody that I've spoken to has said the communication in Coconut Creek is great, especially with the new staff, and they're not new, but the staff that have grown over the past several years to focus on communication as a tool. It's been great. But so the word I used was just enhance, right? Communication channels and outreach. This was very clearly a common theme. In looking to the future, technology is going to be a key part of our success, whether it's lining up the traffic lights for flow, whether it's, making sure that we have interactive information for our community to read, whatever it is, technology is going to be a big deal. And it's going to be a big deal internal to the city to make sure that they have the technology they need to do their jobs, as well as for the community itself, the traffic light example, for example. And then focusing on environmental sustainability in everything that you do. So if you are going to do a communication piece, and if environmental sustainability was one of your key ideas, then you would send out recycled paper or compostable paper, right? Those are the types of things that typically we think of when we talk about this. And then there was that final one, and I don't know if you agree with this or not, but this issue of ensure inclusivity is a focus for all work. I don't know how to say it, right? You guys are catching me on the fly here. So, but inclusivity as a legal word in diversity, equity, and inclusion really means that whoever you are, you feel as if you are a part of what's going on. That could mean that we write it in a different language. That could mean we phrase our wording differently. That could mean, like Yvonne's Cocoa Graham. That could be a feeling of inclusivity for some people. And some people may still want to be included on social media because that is their preferred method. Inclusivity is a very broad term, but that's what it means. It doesn't mean if you're 100 or if you're 10, you feel as if you could be welcome to and you feel included as part of that. So I beat a little inclusive course to death right there. Sorry about that. So let me stop for a second and see if I've missed any adaptive strategies. If you can think of others that are going to be tools or techniques that are going to be critical to Coconut Creek's success moving forward that we can add to this list, I'd rather add and then narrow down at our next meeting. All right, I'm scanning. I don't see anything yet, which is fine. Again, we're going to send these notes out to you in the next day or so that you have them. They might be fairly rough. They might not be super pretty, but at least you can read them for a few days and think about it before our next meeting on the 7th. So that's really what I wanted to talk about today. Thank you for indulging me. This helps a lot as we start to actually put text into the strategic plan and put it together so you can see what it looks like. Before I close you out, I want to see if there were any other questions or issues before we talk about our next meeting. Anything came up at this meeting? All right. So we did send out an invite for your next meeting, which will be on the 7th of April. That happens to be the same date, which is a Wednesday, same time, 11:30 to 1:30. And what we'll do at that point is we'll take a look at all of this, any changes you've made for me in between, any suggested improvements to the words, and we'll talk about one or two other things that need to go into that strategic plan. One of those specifically being, how are we going to measure whether or not we were successful? And that's a great question, because how else will you as a community know that the city's achieved what you want them to achieve? So that'll be a question for next time. I'll put that in the back of your head. I will also send out an email. So, Karen, an invite was sent out. It was just sent out a while ago. So we will check the email and let me, Karen, stay on the meeting when we end the meeting. I'm going to check your email specifically to make sure we have the right email for you, because that could be the issue. All right. Anything else? If not, we are done. Karen, I would ask you to close us out if you would. I want to say thank you to everybody. I know it's 2 hours out of your day, but from my perspective, you guys are a super important piece of this project. We couldn't do it without you, and you will see your words literally reflected in the strategic plan. So I really appreciate it. Karen?
Same here. I think you really captured my sentiments as well. I know this is time consuming, and I know beyond even just the time that you spend here, it takes time to think about the topics that were being discussed and being creative and coming up with your thoughts and your input. So I really appreciate all of your time and your efforts. And I know from everything that I've been hearing here, as well as in the other meetings, that we're going to ultimately end up with a great vision for our future. And it's good to know that all of you were a part of that. So thank you so much. And I look forward to the next meeting with all of you.
All right, everybody, you are welcome to go except for Karen, who I need to hang out for a second to make sure I've got your right email. But everybody else, thank you so much. You'll get an email
Bye.
from us in the next
Bye.
day or
Thank
two.
you.
Thanks, guys. Have a great rest
Have a great
of the
day.
day. Okay, Karen, I think I know what the problem is. I think I have your right email.